The rain hit the windshield like tiny bullets as Walter Hayes drove alone through the quiet Texas highway. At 72 years old, Walter had learned to live with silence. His wife had passed away 8 years earlier. His son rarely called. Most days were spent sitting on the porch with black coffee, watching time move slower than it used to. But tonight was different. Tonight, he couldn't sleep. Earlier that afternoon, while cleaning old boxes in the garage, Walter had found a faded photograph hidden inside a rusted military jacket pocket. The edges were torn. The colors had almost disappeared. 3 young soldiers stood together in the middle of Vietnam, one smiling, one serious, and one barely older than a boy. Walter stared at the picture for nearly an hour, because 2 of those men never came home, and the third one was him. He slowly sat down in his garage chair, hands trembling. Memories he had buried for decades began crawling back into his mind like ghosts waking up. The jungle heat, the helicopters, the screaming, the gunfire that never seemed to stop, and Tommy Reed. Walter closed his eyes. Tommy had been only 19, loud and harmonica in his pocket. He talked endlessly about opening a small fishing shop back in Tennessee after the war. "First beer's on me," Tommy used to say every night. But Tommy never made it home. Walter had spent 50 years trying not to think about that day. Yet now, holding the photograph again, something inside him broke. At the bottom corner of the picture, barely visible under the damage, was handwriting Walter had never noticed before. "If one of us survives, find my mother." Walter's breathing stopped. It was Tommy's handwriting. The next morning, Walter packed a small bag, grabbed the old photograph, and started driving east. For the first time in decades, he had a mission. 3 states later, Walter arrived in a tiny Tennessee town that looked frozen in time. Old diners, empty sidewalks, rusted gas stations. He walked into a small grocery store and showed the cashier the photograph. "Do you know the Reed family?" he asked quietly. The young cashier studied the picture. Then her face changed. "You mean Margaret Reed?" Walter nodded slowly. "She's still alive." Walter felt his knees weaken. Still alive, after all these years. The cashier pointed toward a white house near the edge of town. Walter stood outside the home for nearly 10 minutes before knocking. An elderly woman opened the door. Small, gray-haired, fragile. But her eyes immediately locked onto the photograph in Walter's hands. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Tommy." Walter couldn't speak. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Margaret Reed began to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the quiet tears of a mother who had spent 50 years missing her son. Inside the house, Walter finally told her the truth he had carried his entire life. He told her how brave Tommy had been, how he saved 2 soldiers during an ambush, how his final thoughts were about home, about her. Margaret listened silently, holding the old photograph against her chest like treasure. Then she whispered something Walter would never forget. "For 50 years," she said softly, "I was afraid he died alone." Walter's eyes filled with tears. "He didn't," he replied. The room fell silent. For the first time since the war, Walter felt the weight inside him begin to lift. Before leaving, Margaret handed Walter a small box. Inside was Tommy's harmonica. "He would have wanted you to have it," she said. That night, Walter sat alone in his motel room holding the harmonica and shaking hands. For the first time in decades, he cried. Not because of guilt, not because of pain, but because sometimes, even after 50 years, a broken piece of the soul can still find its way home.